component URL because we wanted to be able to link directly to another page. And then, oops, I have to get back to my slides. Okay, sorry about that. So our query with drilling URL, we entered, rather than going through and finding the component reference link, I had a page to link to. So in this instance, I was able to, I might have even reached out to a technical resource for this, but these are the settings for taking you directly to the Manage Hires page to process a particular hire. So we match that up with the search keys of the request ID. And if you do the lookup, you can find the request ID to link that to from the query. And then we mapped that to the request ID field, so that would actually be the field that contains the link. And then once you would click the link, it would populate the request ID search with the request ID in the query. Okay, and then once you click OK, the drilling URL is populated in the expression text, and you can click OK. And be sure, in using this example of a query, you include any other fields that you'd like to include in the pivot grid. And then this is just of the SQL that we actually used. We did have a couple of custom records in there as well. So next, we would create a pivot grid, and we use the pivot grid wizard delivered with PeopleSoft to create this. So if once you navigate there, you'll define the properties like the name and title, and then go to step 2. And this is where you would select the source, which is PeopleSoft query, and then the query name is the query we created with the drilling URL. And then we selected any output fields we wanted to appear in the grid or the chart. And then next, and I will say between steps 3 and 4, I typically have to go back and forth a lot just because it's not super intuitive, at least to me, in setting up how to set up a grid. Sometimes you just kind of do trial and error and test it out until you get it the way you want. But our goal was to plot the total hire request IDs by start date. So I set a on the request ID a value, column type, and account. And then on these other items, whether it's checkboxes, we want those to appear as filters. And I found that checking the total would provide all of the values versus just the first value or top value. Okay, and moving on to step 4. I skipped the slide. Okay. You'll first set your X and Y axes, and then the chart options. So your title and the type of chart and the start date and labels. This is kind of just a little image of how we were wanting it to appear. I also added a threshold that you can do up here. And we set it at a value of 15 and using the magenta color for the line. the next slide. Jumping around though. Okay. So the next step on step 4 is selecting the fluid mode options. And I actually am only showing the configuration that we updated. Everything else we just kind of left as the default. But I wanted to include a view of the data within the chart. So I selected these fields here to appear on the chart. And then since we're a large organization, we typically update this to view all rather than just previewing a small portion. And since I have the drilling URL within the query source, I've indicated that when someone clicks on that link, I want it to open in a new window. Okay, so the next step is basically just generates a preview of what the chart would look like in classic mode. So then you can go ahead and save that once it generates, and then publish it as a tile, and that will bring it to a spot where we can have it actually accessible by our users. So once you click that, the screen comes up, and you basically kind of just give it a name and a label, and then we have a folder structure created as far as how we want to organize ours. So this probably would be different for you, but these are the options we selected. And then we included the query security of who we wanted to be able to view the pivot grid. Okay, next I'm going to move on to navigation collection, if I can get it started on the correct slide. Okay. So for the navigation collection, this is actually how we did it, but I know that my colleague Tanya had watched a session earlier that was kind of doing navigation collections in 15 minutes. So I would suggest checking out that webinar as well. And this is how we set it up through the PeopleTools portal structure and content. So we actually created a folder, and then we created subfolders. So I'll go through that process. So you'll add a folder, and then kind of set up the folder structure, name, and label. And then the security. So we used the same security that we used for the pivot grid. And then this is where we created subfolders. So if you navigate back to the structure and content portal objects and nav collections, you'll click on the one just created and then add a folder. So that'll be your subfolder. And then fill out the name and label again. And we use a sequence to kind of put some order structure around tiles. And then for folder attributes, this is where you can also include an image next to the folder name. And there's more information in the appendix on how to select those and some tips and tricks. And then if you have additional subfolders you want to create, you would just repeat the process on the previous few slides. Okay, and then the next step is create content reference links. So you'll go to the content you just created and add a content reference link. And then you'll follow the navigation to select the page that you desire, and then repeat that for any additional pages to include. And the next step after you've created all of the nav collection items and folders is to create a tile for the navigation collection. And in this process, we used the delivered wizard for creating a tile, and this is relatively new. So this has a guided process to walk you through the steps. So once you navigate to the PeopleTools portal tile wizard, you'll select to create a new tile, and you'll give it a name, and then click next to move to step 2. And here you will search for the navigation collection that you created, which you have down here. And once that's filled in, you can select the option for navigation panel collapsible, and click next to step 3. You can we accepted the default name, or you can name it according to your naming conventions. And then kind of select the parent folder where you want it to reside in your portal registry, and then set up the security, which again, we kept the same security throughout this process. Okay, and the next is step 4. Select an image for the tile. And again, you can browse through the appendix to see some of the options for selecting an image. And then it'll give you a summary of your selections, and you can click Publish to finish. And next, I will explain how to create the fluid dashboard. So PeopleTools portal dashboard, manage dashboard pages. You'll create a new dashboard. And then continue with creating the labels and the parent folders. So we kind of kept within the same naming conventions and folder structure, and as well as the security. So once you save that, you can add your tiles to the dashboard. So PeopleTools portal, structure and content, fluid, structure content, fluid home pages, and click edit next to the dashboard, which looks like my image may not be appearing on the screen. And then you would select tiles to include in the dashboard. So there'd be a box here with the tiles you created that you can select to include in the dashboard. And then there's some options within the yeah. I'm sorry?
I think you're just a few slides, like
Did you say there's a lag?
showing it. Yeah, there's a lag in the display. We're still seeing the fluid dashboard. Create dashboard.
Okay. Okay, well, my screen is, well, it's kind of refreshing. It keeps flashing though. Are you to the add tiles? I'm sorry?
Yes, it is flashing. Yes, it is flashing a little bit, but when it comes up, we can see it.
Okay. So yeah, like I said, you would find the dashboard that we created, edit, and then we can see the manage, hires, pivot grade, and the production support dashboard tile that we created in the previous steps and select those. And then they have some different options. So I'm trying to think. We did the required fix, which will keep the user from being able to make some of changes as far as how it's displayed on the dashboard. Okay, too far. Okay, so this is kind of what the finished product then looks like. This is our dashboard. So this is the production support dashboard we created. So that has the two tiles on it. So the production support tile takes you to the nav collections that were created. So these were our main folders, and then the subfolders of pages that we added. I didn't go through all these in the presentation, but because it's a repeatable process to add all of those folders. And then we have the manage hires tile, which takes you to the pivot grid that we created. So there's filters, so they can select different options, and the grid or the chart will refresh, as well as the view below with the information. And then it actually has a link to the manage hires. This is request ID takes, if they click that, it opens up the manage hires page, so they can begin the process the same as if they went directly to the manage hires page and selected the employee to process. And this provided more flexibility for the production support team, because some of them are structured by supporting different companies, so they could filter to a different company if they needed to. And then they can kind of look ahead and see if they have a day coming up where there's a lot of hires, like this particular date here. So that was very useful to them. And then also having all the navigation items all in one spot was less clicking around for them and had more relatable items together. I also have a video that I will try and share. I don't know if that will work since I've been having so many other issues. Okay, I don't know if it's a size issue, but I can't even actually get to it from here. So, but I did have a video that just kind of walked you through how you can navigate through all these. So just in conclusion, we were able to centralize navigation and provide statistical information and quick links to daily operations using delivered functionality through configuration. So, and for us, doing something through all delivered functionality and configuration is a huge win, because a lot of times we have a backlog of technical enhancements and fixes that need to be taken care of. So we were able to do this a lot quicker. So that concludes the presentation. Are there any questions? And then I'm showing the appendix here too that we have, you can view. I don't see any questions. Okay. Tanya, do you have anything important to add?
I don't think so. Do you have on that video that you had, would you happen to have a link to that? Maybe you could share it in the chat and people can watch it on their own. Or is it the actual file?
I can probably, well, I don't have a link. It's the actual file.
Gotcha. That probably won't work. No,
Okay.
I think,
I don't
thank
know
you
if it's
for,
possible to add it later. I can do that if possible.
no, thanks for
Okay,
walking us through that.
if there's no questions, then I will go ahead and, yeah, I'll go ahead and conclude the broadcast then. Thank you, everyone.